Welcome everyone. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Hamish. This is my Apex on nuclear energy. So I'm going to give you guys about a 20-minute presentation on the basics of nuclear energy. And as I go, kind of like as you're in a class, like if you have questions, raise your hand, and I'll answer them as we go. So we're going to set up with something fun. We're going to watch a little clip of The Simpsons.
Just find the biggest idiot.
Need somewhere else to dispose of this plutonium.
You just find the biggest idiot off payroll and slip it in his bag. That's silly girl.
Good mac and cheese. I've had better. Down at the train station.
I'll have to check it out sometime.
The best mac and cheese I've ever had is in a bowling alley in Ogdenville.
I am pretty full.
Breadcrumbs on the top.
I'm on my way.
That bag surely needs attendant. Unattended bag!
Panic!
Now, what do you think?
I think we're gonna blow it up. 5, 4, no time for a full countdown.
Ooh, dinner time.
This just in, the suspicious bag detonated at Springfield Union Station today contained deadly plutonium. Can only mean one thing: a terrorist plot. Enough radioactivity was released to create 17 Hulks and a Spider-Man. Here's an artist's conception.
Okay, so do you guys think that was an accurate clip or an inaccurate clip about nuclear energy? Inaccurate? Okay, well, surprise, it was inaccurate. So let's start out with the basics of nuclear energy before we talk about all the different aspects of it. So if you guys don't know, in nature there are these atoms, specifically heavier atoms, that can be radioactive. Radioactive atoms like uranium, plutonium, and after a certain period of time, they'll decay and release energy and heat. And one of these is uranium. So this is raw uranium right here. That's what it looks like. And less than 1% of it's radioactive. So it's not very useful. You can pick it up, it won't do anything to you. It's just like another rock you find. And so we do some science. We enrich it from less than 1% to 3 to 5% for commercial reactors. And after it's been enriched, it looks like this. They put them in big long rods. And this guy's holding one. They're actually safe until they've actually been used in a reactor. Because stuff happens when it's in the reactor and causes it to be unsafe afterwards. But it's still like perfectly fine to hold even before it's put in, even after it's enriched. So we've mined all this uranium, we've concentrated it down so there's a lot of it, a lot more radioactive, and then we put all these rods together. And when you put all these rods together, they produce a ton of heat and energy. And just like when you boil water in the stove, a lot of heat and energy, well, we all use these rods to produce a lot of heat and energy, and we use it to boil water, just like on a stove. So it's in a reactor, we have all these fuel rods producing heat, and then they boil water, and this water expands, boils, produces steam, and spins a turbine. So in a reactor, it's kind of like the fuel rods are like the heating element, and then the pot is kind of like the water you use to boil, to produce energy. And the water in a reactor never actually touches the fuel rods that are radioactive, at least the water they release. And so you boil this water, you produce all this heat, and then you spin the turbine for generated energy, right? And so what happens with all this heat and steam? We actually release a lot of the steam from just these cooling towers. And so a lot of people think this is like CO2 or radioactive waste, but it's just steam from just like boiling water on the stove. And so yeah, anyone have any questions? And so in a nuclear power plant, we've used these rods for like 5 to 10 years, and after that time, they become less useful, not producing as much heat, and we can't really use them anymore. So we take them out, and we put them in these fuel containers like this. They're concrete steel containers that you can just stand next to, and you're actually perfectly fine to stand next to them, and they store the waste. But right now, these containers will only last 50 to 100 years, and then we're going to have to figure out something to do with them to deal with this waste because the waste is radioactive for a very long time. These containers only last a certain amount of time, which is an issue. But we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. So I know what you guys are thinking, like nuclear reactors, nuclear bombs, like that's the first thing I would think of, but they're actually quite different. So in a nuclear reactor, it's only about 5% enriched uranium, versus a bomb, if it contained uranium, it would be over 80% enriched. So I kind of see this as like, lemon juice is an acid, and there's like an acid that can melt your arm off. That's kind of how I explain it, because it's a lot less radioactive than a bomb. And for a bomb to explode, you need to have exactly timed inner explosive for it to compress and explode. And in a nuclear power plant, they don't have any of that. I know you're probably thinking, oh, there's disasters and things, but we'll talk about those in a minute. Those are actually different than a bomb exploding. And there's multiple backup systems to ensure that the power plant won't melt down. Any questions? Okay, so how we were talking about that waste, and you're wondering like how safe are those waste containers? So let's watch a clip of a train hitting one of those waste containers to see what happens. No one was harmed.
And a different flask on a stalled lorry. The train hurtles towards the lorry. The train is destroyed, but the flask survives the 80-mile-an-hour impact with its contents intact.
So that's just an example of how strong these containers we use to store our nuclear waste are. So right now in the United States, we store all of our nuclear waste on site at each power plant. So all these green dots are either research bases, universities, or power plants. And you're probably wondering, what's the square right here? Why is that one different? So that was actually a plan to store all of our waste deep underground, which is the safest thing to do long term. Some other countries do this. I believe Denmark is one of them. But right now, due to political and local laws, this never happened. But in the long term, we're going to have to find something to do with our waste. Either build new storage containers or bury it deep underground. And like deep underground, it's kind of like we mine it underground and we put it back there. It's underneath the water table, and it won't hurt anybody underground. And that's probably the one issue of nuclear energy. And the second, this is actually the easiest to observe, is thermal pollution. So you've got this power plant, you're producing all this heat, releasing the steam, and you've got all this water that's hot. And so you release water, that's just hot water, there's no radiation in it. But a lot of traditional power plants will release this hot water back into a river or a lake, right? And so this hot water raises the temperature of the lake, takes away oxygen from fish, and it can actually hurt the ecosystem. So if you're next to a power plant and you see there's less fish and stuff, it's not from the radiation, it's actually just in the hot water. And this hot water can actually hurt the ecosystems. But there are newer power plants that are working to change this. Okay, so let's talk about meltdowns. Raise your hand if you've heard of nuclear meltdowns. Okay, can anyone name a nuclear meltdown for me? Chernobyl. Any other ones?
Japan, Fukushima? I think?
Yes. Is there any other ones anyone knows?
New York.
New York?
Yeah, there's an island.
3 Mile Island?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about these meltdowns. It was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, my bad.
Pretty close. Chernobyl. So this is by far the worst one. This happened in the Soviet Union and what is now Ukraine in 1986. And so what happened here is they're running this test and they're pushing the reactor to try to generate more energy. And they're like, oh, it's going a little bit out of control. So we want to stop it, right? So they want to blow these rods to help stop the reaction. But instead of stopping it, these rods actually sped it up. So it's kind of like you're driving your car down the freeway, there's something coming towards you, and you try to push on the brake, but instead you push the accelerator. And so this created a tremendous amount of heat and energy, boiled the water, and created an explosion from that expanding water and heat. It's different than like a nuclear bomb going off, where the bomb explodes, and it's different physics. It's just actually just water expanding, what happened at Chernobyl. And what's really crazy about Chernobyl is the government knew like 6 years before that there was actually a flaw in the design, and they didn't tell anybody because they didn't want to pay to fix it. And like, oh, that won't ever happen. And then it did. And so that's pretty crazy to think about. Fukushima, this happened more recently in Japan. So there was a 9.0 magnitude earthquake. The earthquake itself didn't damage the plant, but it created a 30-foot tall tidal wave. And they had a seawall that was only 20 feet tall. So it comes over the seawall, and you're trying to keep your power plant cool, right? And so you're pumping water into the plant to boil it and create energy. And it damaged the pumps that cool the power plant down. And so this created a meltdown, an explosion, and there was radiation released, but only a couple workers were actually exposed to dangerous levels. And instead of Chernobyl, the whole thing explodes, sends pieces of the uranium and all the pieces of the core everywhere. At Fukushima, the core itself wasn't scattered everywhere, so a lot less radiation was released. And no one in the public was actually exposed to super high levels of radiation, only a few plant workers. What is kind of crazy is like the evacuations they issued actually hurt more people than the radiation itself. And so this was like a couple people got exposed to radiation. At Chernobyl, the official death toll I believe is like 300, but almost 1 million people had to evacuate their homes. One you guys may have not heard of is 3 Mile Island. This happened in 1979 in Pennsylvania, where the reactor partially melted down due to a pump failing to cool it down. So you're pumping that water in to cool down the power plant, and a pump fails, and it starts to get hotter. But there's no sensor on the pump to tell people that the pump failed. And so it led to a partial meltdown. A small amount of radiation was released, but not dangerous levels of it. But the biggest thing with this one is they didn't communicate to the public what's going on. They issued evacuations and created a big panic when there's really no need to do that. And so that caused a lot of mistrust of nuclear energy, a lot of fear in the United States. Oh, any questions about these? So after these meltdowns,
Question.
oh yeah.
You said Fukushima, more people got injured during the evacuation
Yes.
process. How did that happen?
So there's a tidal wave, and there's all these roads are damaged, and they're evacuating a lot of old people from hospitals and things quickly because of the threat of a meltdown, and some people died in those evacuations, but not from the radiation itself.
Do they still have nuclear reactors in the Soviet Union after Chernobyl?
Yeah, they do, I believe. There's some in Ukraine because the Soviet Union, split up.
Yeah.
I believe they built a couple designs similar to Chernobyl, and all the ones that had that flaw they deconstructed and fixed with that design. But yeah, there are still some in Russia. Any other questions? Okay. So, if I after I heard about all these meltdowns, I'd be like, what are we gonna do to change this so it doesn't happen again? And in the United States, we've changed the regulations tremendously. We've upgraded our existing plants to have more backup systems. We do more worker training. We do these background checks. To work in a power plant, you have to get your background check, and so they see if you've ever been caught drunk driving or using illegal substances, you can't work in a power plant. There's more communication with the public if something goes wrong, so they can know how dangerous actually is this. Am I going to die, or is it going to be fine? And there's more licenses required. But all these meltdowns have created a lot of fear of the nuclear industry, and a lot of local laws have been created to stop nuclear plants being built. So in the U.S., we've only built a couple of reactors since the 80s, and these disasters happened. And ones we've built have been over budget, so this is an issue. And there's been a lot less engineers in the industry to help build new plants. And so, we don't talk about nuclear much, but I'm sure you've all heard of solar and wind for climate change. And you can see kind of the breakdown of our energy in the U.S. Nuclear is almost 20%, whereas solar is only 4% and wind is only 10%. And you can see natural gas is by far the biggest chunk. So if you've been hearing about, I'm telling you it's pretty safe, it's safe, but how safe actually is it? So this right here is a chart. It's using data from the world to model a town of 150,000 people. So this is like a model town of about the size of Torrance. And in this model town, they're using one kind of power source. That's either coal, nuclear, solar, and using only that source to power the town. And so this graph shows us how many people die each year from generating power, from accidents and things that happen in the plants and power production. So, anyone have a guess for how many people die from coal production in this town? Anyone? 2?
25.
25. Well, you're exactly right. It's 25 people.
Okay, Alex.
Wait, what?
And then for oil, it's about 18. We don't really use a lot of oil in the U.S., but that's just like generally this kind of things. So how about natural gas, which we use a lot of? How many people do you think die each year from natural gas? 50.
35.
35. Okay.
40.
40. How about hydropower? 5.
6.
15.
Okay.
20.
21.
3 people and 1 person. Okay, how about the big one? How about for nuclear, solar, and wind?
0.
0.
Point one.
1.
Point one?
I think 1.
Okay.
Depends on the regulations.
Half.
So it's 1 person every 25 years on average.
So 1, 0, 0.
And that's counting all the disasters that have happened and all the accidents. And so in my mind, like, nuclear is way safer than coal because coal is producing all those emissions outside of a plant, it's releasing coal dust. And if you actually measured the radiation outside of a nuclear plant and a coal plant, due to the coal plant's like particulates, it's actually causes there to be higher radiation to be measured outside of the coal plant. Yes.
Is there any reason like why like you think that we have like this stigma around like nuclear, or you're gonna get into that? It's okay, I don't want to.
Well, I would say because of all these meltdowns, like the big events, like you see a plane crash and like that's a big thing. All these people died, and you're like people don't really know like how rare they actually are compared to like the everyday things. Like people die from cancer every day, people die from heart attacks, but you don't really think about that because it just happens so much. Versus like a nuclear power plant, like a big thing. Oh, it's people are gonna die really quickly and it's scary. Yes.
I'm curious, you said in Fukushima like the workers got exposed to large amounts of radiation. If you know you're exposed to large amounts of radiation, is that fixable, like medically? Like you know you're gonna get cancer somewhere, right, in your body? Like is there any way to prevent that?
It's not like quite, it's not guaranteed to get cancer. So if you get exposed to low levels of radiation, like if you're going out in the sun, like you go to the beach, you get exposed to radiation from the sun. If you get an X-ray, that's a lot of radiation. If you go on a plane, that's a lot of radiation. And those like don't really raise your cancer at all. So after you get to a certain point, it does increase a lot. And there's like a certain point where if you get exposed to a ton of radiation, you'll die within like a month, just because it destroys your cells, not just your DNA. But that's like a tremendous amount. Like only like a dozen people would have ever been exposed to that much. It takes a lot of radiation. But if you get exposed to low levels, you can recover and live like 10, 20, like a long time. And you've got a higher chance of cancer, but it's not like guaranteed. It's just a lot higher chance.
Okay.
Makes sense. Any other questions? Okay. So I really care about climate change. That's why I care about nuclear. And I want to kind of show you what the different carbon-free energy sources are compared to nuclear. So we've got solar. It's very cheap to produce, a lot cheaper than nuclear. But it only works part of the time in the sun, takes up a lot of space, and we need batteries. So that's, that can take up a whole desert and take away an environment from organisms. Wind is really good. It can share land with like a lot of farms who actually build windmills on them to generate energy, but you still need wind, so it only works when there's wind, and you need batteries to store the energy. Water power, which is one of the best energy sources in my mind, works all the time, just like nuclear, but you need a river to do this. And in the United States, we've actually used like most of the rivers we possibly could build hydropower, and then it takes away that ecosystem from fish that migrate up rivers and stuff. And nuclear power, it works all the time and doesn't produce any carbon emissions. And nuclear power plants, if they're built well and stuff, can last almost 100 years. Like we've got power plants that have lasted 50 years, even longer, and they're perfectly safe to use still. But you still have to worry about that waste and sometimes that thermal pollution. Yes?
Has technology for nuclear power plants like significantly advanced if they're like 50-year-old ones versus like current
Yes,
ones?
it has. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second. It has advanced a lot. We just haven't built a lot of new ones yet, but we're very close to. Any other questions about this? Okay, so let's talk about the future. So I was talking about how we got all that nuclear waste, right? And how it's just sitting those in those containers, and what are we going to do with it? So we can actually recycle it. There's technology to recycle it. We've actually developed this already. And so we basically do the same process as enriching it to recycle it. It's not 100% recycling, but you can recycle it and use it again. And if we use all the waste in the United States, we could actually power existing plants for another 100 years if we actually recycled all of it. Any questions about that? Yes.
Yeah. What does that mean to like recycle the
So
rods that have like used up?
So basically, like when you reuse a rod, you go from like 5% enriched uranium to like 1 or 2%. And there's other stuff that's produced when you go through this, but you can actually just like kind of take that uranium, separate it out again, and then redo it and enrich it again. There's some byproducts, and it's politically a little bit like uncertain because of the other radioactive stuff in it. Because there's other radioactive stuff after you've used it, but it's just basically kind of the same process as enriching in the first place. So let's talk about the future. So I don't know, we've got all these existing plants, but how about the future? So radiant nuclear, which our guest speaker, Mr. Lin, will come up in a second and talk about that. That's like a small modular reactor. And then TerraPower, that's Bill Gates' one. He's actually got approval to build it in Wyoming. It's like a whole new design with molten salt and stuff to help store power. Oklo, they're working on all different projects. They're actually working about the recycling of nuclear waste and splitting some power plants. And there's dozens of other companies. So if you've been inspired by nuclear energy, and if you want to like help out and build new reactors and help spread the word, you can vote for legislation that supports it. Talk to people about it, talking to everyone you know about it, and if you want to like tell them like nuclear is not that scary after all, you can write to congressman, and you can just learn more about it yourself. And here's a couple of resources. I'll send this out after. Chernobyl, it's a documentary, I think it's 5 episodes about what happened at Chernobyl. It's a little dramatized and not 100% accurate, but it does get most of the facts right. And here's a couple of videos about nuclear waste and like what nuclear could look like in the future. And then the American Nuclear Society does a lot of stuff with advocacy and spreading knowledge about it. Any questions? Yes.
I want to jump back to the radiation. In what ways does radiation affect people? Like.
Okay. Radiation. Wait.
Specific examples you have.
So radiation, there's different kinds of radiation that's released. Some of it doesn't get past your skin, and some of it goes all the way through your body. Radiation can damage your DNA, and it can also damage your cells and kill them if there's enough of it. But like human bodies are adapted to absorb like some radiation just because the sun gives you radiation every day. X-rays give you radiation. All these different things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was asking more about like the nuclear radiation.
Okay.
Or is there like just not much of a difference between?
It's a little bit different, but it's like basically the same. It's just a lot more of it.
That's it.
Yes.
So do you think like with the recycling of it, since it's like more radioactive or reactive, sorry, is that like, do you think what's preventing some people from taking that route?
It's just because it costs more money than mining it. It's the biggest thing, and also geopolitically, like it's like politically, people don't really want to do it just because some of the byproducts and stuff are just dangerous, and they don't want to deal with that. So, Mr. Lin, if you want to come up and
great job. Let me answer the questions the way I would answer them. So some of you probably see me around because I'm a Chadwick parent. Do you guys know who my kid is? No.
Winston.
Yeah. Okay. Some of y'all. Okay. But something that you guys probably don't know is I'm actually a Chadwick alum from 2001. Yeah. So there's actually a standing argument with the class of 2000, which class was actually the millennial class. Because 2000, they graduated in 2000, but they only went through their senior year a half year. While we, as seniors, experienced a whole entire new millennium. So we're the new millennium class, I think. But we'll never settle that. So maybe, let me see. Do I need a entire screen? Cool. All right, cool. I think, you guys have your lunch ending in like 5 minutes-ish?
Like
Your lunch?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, cool. Awesome. Just a quick introduction. My name is Dominic, and I graduated here in 01. and I had such an amazing sort of career experience. I worked mostly for the first 15 years doing defense work, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. I was a jet engine designer coming out of college. I went to RPI. So those of you that are seniors, you know you gotta go choose where you're gonna go. But eventually I found myself at SpaceX for about 8 years, and have you all heard of Starlink? Yep, Starlink was my baby. I started the user terminal program with 3 engineers and myself in Hawthorne, California, in this like empty building. But today, Starlink is the reason why SpaceX is going IPO. After working for Elon on a lot of projects directly for 8 years, I decided to go after doing something more fun for myself, because SpaceX is like sprinting in a marathon. And so one thing I did before joining Radiant is I worked for a company called Divergent, or Zinger, and they're a US manufacturer of a hypercar called the 21C. It's a 1,350 horsepower, 3D printed car, super awesome. In that capacity, I had a chance to work with like amazing brands like Ferrari, McLaren, anything you can think about, Bugatti. Those are all my customers. But I realized that spending the rest of my career making cars even faster than they really need to be wasn't really kind of what I want to spend my time doing. And so I joined a little company called Radiant about 1.5 years ago, and they just had 70 people thinking about how to package the big power plant image was showing into a containerized size, like where you can tow with a truck. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes kind of talking about that. So this slide was done about a few months ago. About 100 employees from former SpaceX, Naval Reactors, and National Labs. Today, we're actually almost double that because how much interest is actually in nuclear. This is actually one of the heat rejection systems that we've built and manufactured for a test we're about to do at the Idaho National Lab this summer, so a few months from now. Lots of really exciting things happening here, and we're funded by all these amazing venture capitalists. So what are we doing that's a little different? What you're seeing right here is actually the containerized reactor sitting on a truck bed, and it can be towed anywhere. So what are the key things? We want to focus on rapid deployment, scalability, mass production, zero on-site waste, and fail-safe. I'll take a moment to step back for a minute. You guys understand, like, maybe the closest example I can give you for why a flexible access to energy is so important is today, when you think about like Starlink as a fast, like high-speed internet. If you want to get Starlink here in Los Angeles, it's not really useful because you can actually get like all the different cable services at home, right? But if you live out in Montana, Idaho, Alaska, maybe off on an island or on your boat, and you want to get high-speed internet access, you can't get that because it's not easy to do it. But if you got Starlink, basically it's like internet connection on demand. So if you think about AI and all data centers that are expanding today, the only way for us to get enough energy, a lot of people are thinking about, well, let's make more power plants. Let's add more fuel to these, AP1000s that are made by GE and Westinghouse. But the reality is, if you add a lot more electricity in the grid, what do you guys think is going to happen? These grids are like 100 years old. Right. So like think about like you're telling a really old man or woman running a marathon, and you're like, okay, here's some extra weight, go faster. That infrastructure isn't going to work. And so in order for a lot of companies to start to get access to energy, like clean energy like nuclear, essentially you want to make it on demand. And so imagine a future where you're like, I'm starting a business, I have a 3 megawatt electric need for my business. How do I get it? If you order energy from a power plant and they're going to build new energy for you, it's going to take how many years, you guys think? Minimally 10 years, and it's going to be billions of dollars. But if you order one of these, it's just kind of like, oh, I want to get Starlink tonight. It'll come overnight, it'll be delivered to you, and you can plug in and essentially get power instantly. And that's the idea about these portable reactors. Okay, cool. I'll just fast track a little bit. It's 1 megawatt power nuclear in a box, super flexible, zero on-site waste. Waste is something that Hemish talks about. After you finish using this reactor, it's good enough to power about 1,000 homes at a time. When you're done with it, you can just tow it away instead of leaving waste on site. Or you can make it 1-pack, 4-pack, any pack that's going to support you. This is actually something that I want to kind of walk through. Hamish talks about how these uranium generates energy at the end, spinning a turbine. So essentially, if you've taken physics or chemistry, the way you think about this is hot magic rocks, which are uranium like isotopes, sits inside this reactor, and it generates thermal energy. Like it gets hot when it gets closer together. And that thermal energy gets piped into different systems in here, and that becomes mechanical energy because heat starts moving things. And once it starts to turn a turbine, which is an alternator, kind of like a magnet, it actually generates electric energy, right? So essentially the way the power cycle works is it goes from thermal to mechanical and then to power gen, which is electrical output. And that's essentially how the reactor works. And this is like the size of the reactor, pretty much. All right, let me see if I can walk through some other stuff. So Hamish talks about fuel that's being used today by the industry. How many percentage enriched did he say it was? Do you guys remember? 3 to 5%. Yeah, so we call those low enriched uranium. In this reactor made by Radian, a bunch of SpaceX engineers, we're using what we call high assay, low enriched uranium, which means we're going to use about 20% enriched uranium. It's not weapons grade. Weapons grade are 80%, 90% or yeah. So it's a little scarier, but it's a lot denser, which means if you want to have longer life and generate more electricity, essentially you want to raise the enrichment of the uranium. And the more enriched uranium you have, the smaller the compact the size you can be. So like space reactors use highly enriched uranium, and those space reactors can fit in like a microwave box. That's how small it is. All right. So to date, I've started there about a year and a half ago. We bought a bunch of things. We made our own zirconium hydride. We bought a bunch of PCEA, which are nuclear grade graphite, to do basically act as a nuclear reflector. We bought big forgings that we machined. That is going to be the pressure vessel for the reactor pressure vessel. We have built the heat rejection system, as well as the TAC, which is turbo alternator compressor, which is what you use to generate electricity with. All made in the USA, which is like super awesome, and also made hopefully here in El Segundo. The company is doing really well. It's gotten contracts from Air Force, INL, DIU, which is the Defense Innovations Unit, and recently the Army knocked on our door through the Janus program, which is like a huge multi-billion-dollar program asking for a private company like Radiant to go, how do you generate power for the Army, for the military, but also for the civilians. Some really cool renderings of what it'll look like once it's installed. Each unit by itself can power about 1,000 homes for 5 years straight, and you can actually unload the fuel and reload the fuel like batteries, and then keep going. Lots of servers, lots of indoor farms, a lot of EVs. So the biggest sort of like benefit that I think most people don't realize is in remote places, most like towns like in Alaska, they use diesel to generate their power, like diesel generators. And about 1 megawatt energy a day equates to 1,200 gallons of diesel burned. So imagine that. So have you guys seen a 55-gallon drum, which is like kind of this tall and this round? So 1,200 divided by 55. That's how many gallons of, like drums of diesels consumed each day by 1,000 homes. So like a small town literally has to have trucks delivering diesels every single week to just power hospitals, schools, their homes, which is kind of crazy. But one of these reactors right here can sit there for 5 years and 0 emissions, 0 refueling, and flexible anytime you want. Set up in a day. And once the reactor is towed to the Idaho National Labs and is tested, we'll get our license, which means we can start to build these basically in mass quantities, which is something really awesome. That's pretty much it. That's the reactor, some piping, made in USA, super awesome company to work with, so yeah. All right, what questions do you have? I know you all short on time. Yeah, go for it.
So the project that you guys are currently working on, it does still generate waste, you know? It does still.
Yeah.
So where does it end up going?
So the waste that it generates will have to go to some storage site. No different than what Hamish has talked about. Yeah. And then there are recycling plans. There are also different like mechanism to deal with how to repurpose the excess of fuel. Yeah.
Does your company deal with the waste after it's collected every 5 years?
Yeah, pretty much. So like if you sold it to any company, instead of saying, the way electricity works is essentially like all of our electric bills, we get priced in for what the next 20 years is going to look like if we start a new power plant. But the way this model works is you're paying as you go, right? So it's imagining like changing that business model. And so you don't want a customer to go, oh, I want to order a trailer, and then it shows up, and at the end we leave their waste for them. They just want to pay for the kilowatts they consume. And when they're done, you just tow it away. Cool. All right, well, Hamish, great job presenting, and thank you for inviting me to come in here.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Hamish. Yeah, good job. I love the presentation. Yeah.
Have you seen